Welcome, Winnipeg fans all across the U.S. and Canada. This is the Winnipeg Terminal. You are now boarding, fresh off of our summer vacation. I'm your host, Mike Dandry, along with Joe Pritchard. Joe, how are we doing? How was your vacation?
Oh, it was a vacation basically from hockey, but the football has been going less well than we hoped. But I got to spend some time on the alcohol last week talking about that, and of course, Rouge, White, and Blue is on a weekly schedule now, so you can go back and see how I felt all this past month if you really feel like it.
Yeah, and not doing too well as far as the football is concerned. And well, hockey has not been much better. Of course, our season's been over for a while, but there's a lot to talk about, and there's not a lot to talk about in that, and we'll get into that in this week's episode. But sit back, relax, and enjoy. All right, let's dive right in by just kind of going over our sort of summer break that we had, but for some of us, not really. Joe, we'll start with you.
Well, I got to experience the wonders of the NHL offseason, which lasts all of a week apparently. Not usually this attuned into it, but of course now with the terminal show, I gotta be paying attention even when they're not skating. But other than that, I was kind of mystified as to why the Bombers started as slow as they did.
And I'm trying to kind of figure out I mean, there's a number of reasons why, but with the roster they have on paper, the Bombers look like they should be just off to a great start, but obviously has not been the case.
No, I mean you can blame injuries all you want, and that goes a long way toward it. On the other hand, even looking back over these past few years, when the team has been dominant and then a little bit less dominant each year as we go, the margin of error keeps coming down and down and down. And then eventually you're past it, and that's what was happening. The Bombers lost 3 games that they would have normally pulled out in the past 3 years. Uh, got down to the 7 in Ottawa before having the passes knocked away and losing a game that they probably normally would have won. BC was tight. Uh, Calgary was actually looking like a rough one until Zach Collaros goes down and Chris Trevler comes in and rallies the team, but not quite enough. Over the past couple of years, they would have probably won 2 or 3 of those games, and they just left them all on the table.
At least two of them, yeah. But I mean, there's still plenty of season to go, but we'll kind of see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you get into November and anything can happen. 2019, anybody? They were third in the
yeah,
West. Nobody comes out of third in the West or the East and goes and runs the table and wins the Grey Cup, except the couple of times in history where it's happened, and the Bombers were one of them.
hmm now one of the things that I want to brag about real quick, and it's not really Winnipeg related, but it is hockey related. So a couple of weeks ago, I went on a trip of a lifetime, let me tell you. But I flew from Minneapolis to Fairbanks, Alaska, and took this bus tour from Fairbanks across eastern Alaska through the Yukon Territory, back down in the panhandle of Alaska, and we ended up the trip in Vancouver. Well, two things on that trip. One, it was awesome but sad at the same time because it was Game 7 of the Oilers versus the Panthers, and I was in Oilers territory. I was in the Yukon territory in Whitehorse, and there were so many Oilers fans, and it was great. The only sad thing is, of course, the result, but like how disappointed all the fans were when they were walking out, because it's one thing for like, you know, Winnipeg to be cheering for Edmonton because we want the cup north of the border, but it's another thing when you're in like if it was Winnipeg in our instance, you know what I mean? It just adds to that disappointment. But another part of that trip that I thought this was hilarious. So we're flying back. We take a bus from Vancouver down to Seattle, and that's where we fly back to Minneapolis from Seattle. Well, there was a guy when I was waiting for security. There was a guy behind me that I just struck up conversation with, and he was from Vancouver, and we were just like talking about all these different things. We talked about trips that we've been on, about work and everything, and of course, inevitably, we get on the hockey conversation, and I was asking him, I was like, okay, presumed Nucks fan here. And he was like, hold on, let me stop you right there. I am not a Nucks fan by any stretch. And I asked him, like, who are you a fan of? And he said Detroit. And, you know, I mean, beggars can't be
Fair.
choosers, I suppose. But he goes on to talk about how he hates Vancouver fans, and he was like, "Yeah, that stuff that went down in 2011, that pretty much describes Vancouver Canucks fans to a T." And I was like, "Oh, you don't have any harsh feelings towards your own home fan base at all, do you?"
No,
I just,
I'm sure living in a place that roots for one team and you root for the other has to wear on you, especially when it's the primary thing that's talked about all the time on sports media. You can't get away from it. You have to deal with it. Of course, you're going to feel a little bit like an outsider in your own hometown.
and most fans around here, as you know, most hockey fans around here are Wild fans, just because we are in such close proximity to the Twin Cities. But there are cases like you, for example, where there is that Minnesota Wisconsin rivalry, and not going to be cheering for a Minnesota team whatsoever.
No,
So I can appreciate that. This coming from a
it's
guy
the
who,
it's the way I was raised, for better or worse.
yeah. And I mean, I don't have any loyalty to my hometown team either with the Penguins, so I I get that. But I do have loyalty to the Pirates, who beat the brains out of the Brewers last night.
Yeah, that's baseball for you.
But you know what? The way the Pirates have been playing, they won 12-2 last night, and they'll lose 1-0 tonight. So,
Oh yeah, that's how that always works. Baseball's the weirdest sport, I swear.
especially when you get position players in the pitch,
Oh yeah.
like
And then
the
they strike three guys out in a row because they're throwing 30 miles an hour slower than the pitchers do now.
Rowdy Tellez has a career ERA of 0. Which he's pitched on more than one occasion, which is hilarious. And some Pittsburgh radio stations call him the Husky Bucko. But we'll kind of stay away from that. Of course, I'm kind of deviating from the really sad topic that we have to talk about, and that is, well, you know what? We'll deviate a little further, at least from the really sad topic. We'll talk about the draft real quick, and then
Okay.
we'll talk. We'll talk not so free agency. Um, so we got the Fonz, right? Alphonse Frey, and he doesn't solve all of our problems. I'll say that much, but mind you, we didn't have a first round pick, of course, right? Um, I still think that decent size, 6'1", 197 from Sweden. He's a left-handed defenseman. I know that we have been looking all around for a right-handed defenseman. Still looking for a good one, anyways. But I think that, I mean, he dominated juniors. and that can or may not translate to the NHL. And of course, it's not going to translate right away. The kid's only 18 years old, but I mean, with a perplexing blue line situation where it seemed like we had so much depth before, and now free agency happens, we may have bought someone out, as you know. Schmitty boy, we bought him out, but we of course are losing other blue liners, and we might not have as much depth on the blue line as initially anticipated going into the off season. So that begs the question: do you think that this is going to give some of those other guys that never really got a fair shot? And I think you know who I'm alluding to, former first round pick, 10th overall, Billy Hainela.
Mm-hmm. That was the first name that came to my mind. It's like if he doesn't make the team this year, he's never going to.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, the kid was top 10 pick, and it seems like he does not get the opportunity. And I mean, it's not like I don't want to say that he's set the world on fire. That's not. I'd be lying if I said that. But at the same time, he's not really been given a fair crack at the NHL level. He's been doing okay with the Moose, but he's just not getting that fair crack in the NHL. And I would like to see him get that fair chance because they've been giving guys like Logan Stanley too many chances and somehow earned himself an extension.
And over $1 million in restricted free agency somehow.
I'm blown away by that.
That's an expensive seat in the press box.
Yes, it is. And I mean, when he's on the ice, he's more of a liability than anything else. And I mean, he's certainly a better hockey player than I am, so I can't really.
I mean, every once in a while, though, you see why they're trying, but that doesn't happen often enough.
Right. And I don't know. I'm not sold on him. I don't know if he really earned that contract that he got. I don't know what your thoughts are.
It's one more year. Then we'll see.
Yeah.
It's better. It's better than having not enough depth for sure.
True, but I think that the Stanley experiment should be coming to an end soon. But David Gustafsson was re-signed too, so that's good. I guess we're kind of transitioning from the draft to free agency,
and starting with the highlights, which are very few. Although, to be fair, that first day of free agency, they were throwing money around like crazy. I didn't see anything that made me go, "Oh, that was too low. Winnipeg should have been in on that." So Chevy works at his own pace because remember last year, like Scheifele and Hellebuck went into September, I want to say, before they got their extensions.
Yeah, and I knew this wasn't going to happen, but how about Nashville winning the Stamkos lottery? Do you think he's over the hill, or do you think he's still got something left?
I don't know what Tampa Bay's doing. Like either you commit to trying one more time with the core you have, or you move on from all of it instead of just one piece that happens to be your centerpiece for the last decade.
And he was the heart and soul of that team. I mean, he wore the C for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it comes down to a couple of, we're talking about less than $1 million a year was the difference, I want to say. That tells you that something's not quite right.
I'd have to agree.
We're missing a piece here as to why that all went down.
But I will say, to their credit, they did go after Jake Gensel, who was funny. Granted, this was a lot of my friends who are Pittsburgh Penguins fans. They were like sharing all of those local media things like, oh, Gensel considering return to the Penguins. We all knew that wasn't going to happen. And
they're not in the position to do that.
They're not. They're going to just kind of, I mean, Crosby's going to retire a Penguin, and God bless him, because I mean it's kind of like dark days at the end of his career for how amazing of a career he's had, and he himself has not fallen off. Of course, he's like a fine wine. Seems to be getting better every year, but the team around him not so much. Letang's certainly not the player that he was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But to his credit, he had some health issues several times. And Malkin not pulling his weight like he did 10 years ago. I mean, Pittsburgh's turning into a retirement home.
Well, what will happen is all those guys will leave in the next couple of years. They'll have a year or two where they're just rock bottom, and then they'll pull out a franchise center because they win the lottery, and then they keep going.
And the Capitals will too, and we'll have the same Penguins, Capitals fighting at the basement, and then fighting for the top of the East, and Buffalo will just stay perpetually in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
I work with a guy who's a Sabres fan, and it was kind of funny.
Condolences to him.
Yeah, I know, right? And it was kind of funny because so it was me, him, and another one of our coworkers she's originally from Chicago, and she is you'll laugh when I say this, she's a White Sox fan, and I was like, you know what? All three of us are fans of poverty, terrible franchises. You like the Buffalo Sabres, you like the Chicago White Sox, and I unfortunately like the Pittsburgh Pirates. We all love crappy franchises. So, but yeah, going back to, we really kind of deviated there, but going back to free agency and some of the highlights for the Jets. Defenseman Colin Miller to a 2-year contract. Yay!
Again, depth, better than not having it.
That is true. I'll at least say that much. But we have depth in the net too. Maybe not the best depth in the world, but we signed Eric Comrie once again to a 2-year extension, or not really extension, 2-year contract, but might as well, for all intents and purposes, call it an extension, because how many times has he been with Winnipeg now?
Yeah, he probably has his own locker in the Moose locker room that they just don't empty.
Yeah, because they know he's going to come back.
Even on the games where he's on the other team, he just shows up at the locker because he's so used to it.
Might as well, and he knows he's going to come back there eventually anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of our depth and net, Capo Kakinen, 1-year contract, who was a 4th-round pick by the Wild in the 2014 draft. That's pretty wild. Spent some time in New Jersey. But
not sure I like picking over Minnesota's leftovers, but, well, for a depth goaltender that's going to play 20 games, sure.
I mean, remember Matt Hendricks? He wasn't, well, his second tenure with the Jets was Minnesota's leftover, but I still liked him. He was a St. Cloud State grad, so I really liked him.
Oh, I would explain that.
Yeah. But who else? We have, obviously, Gustafson and Stanley that were signed to extensions. And we have Hayden Fleury, Mason Shaw coming to an arena near you in fall 2024, as the Winnipeg Jets PR worded it on X, formerly known as Twitter. And we have Jarrett Anderson Dolan to a 2-year contract, who recorded 28 points, 15 goals, 13 assists, and 18 penalty minutes in 127 NHL games. So he has about a season and a half of experience. We got a lot of depth signing, but for the talent that we lost, I am not sold on. I would have rather seen a little bit more go towards, I don't want to say it, but I'll say it, NHL caliber talent.
The guys that make the differences.
Yeah, difference makers. We'll just say that. Because one of the big losses that we had in net, Laurent Brossoit, to a division rival, Chicago Blackhawks.
I mean,
Not
that was going to happen, though. He earned it. And we weren't going to
he
pay a
did.
backup $3 million a year.
Right. He certainly earned it. He's likely going to start there. Uh, but and he gets to play with Connor Bedard. So like, I
And he
mean,
gets to earn his money, like,
yeah.
every single night. Poor guy.
And Kyle Capobianco signed with another division rival, Dallas Stars. Seems like we're losing a few to a couple of rivals here. Brendan Dillon, that's a big loss in literally and figuratively. Signed to the New Jersey Devils. Not really a fan of that one. Sean Monahan, another big loss, signed with Columbus. Isn't that kind of ironic? There's more to that, but and then Tyler Toffoli signed with San Jose, which I think the writing on the wall was on the wall with Toffoli. I wanted to see him do better in Winnipeg. I think he wanted to see himself do better, but it wasn't the fit for him, and I kind of figured he was going to go away. Sean Monahan, I was very disappointed that he went elsewhere. I really thought that he could fit in. He really did fit in this past year, but going forward with the core that we have, I think he would have gelled better with this core than what's going on in Columbus, where the dumpster fire is taking place. And they are looking to move Patrick Laine.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. It didn't feel like Monahan fit in very well 5-on-5, but the power play had been just gone before he showed up.
It was really electric when he showed up.
It really helped put that back onto a firm ground. So that's going to be missed. But his play style didn't really fit the 5-on-5 game the Jets like to play. So as much as I don't like to lose a second line center of that caliber, it's possible maybe Vladimir Nemeshnikov takes that role and runs with it, because he was doing that before Monahan came in, and he seems to fit what the Jets like to do better. What I'm interested in seeing is what the difference between a Rick Bowness-led team that Scott Arniel helped guide when Bowness was gone for various health issues, what that team looks like as compared to you giving Arniel the keys. What's the difference there? What different kind of play styles are they going to be coming up with? And how are they going to make it fit with the lineup we have right now?
That's a solid analysis too. Yeah, I don't know what this is as perplexing as an off season as we had last year in a way. The only difference and what makes it a little less perplexing is the fact that we do have guys like Scheifele and Hellebuck locked up. That was obviously a ginormous question mark last year.
And now there's room for a big swing in February again.
Yeah. So I don't like our free agency. TSN graded the Jets free agency moves with D. And I kind of have to agree with that. But, you're not going to sign every big name in the off season. It's just a matter of with the pieces that we have now. This reminds me a little bit of the season, like the short season where we kind of just like basically our fourth line, like we had just all depth guys. Third line, we had Lowry, but he was alongside a couple depth guys too. We had a lot more of not difference makers. I like to use that word now. We had a lot more difference makers this past year than we did in the shortened season. We also traded Laine leading up to that, and then, Dubois whined his way out of Winnipeg, whined his way out of Los Angeles and into Washington. So how long do you think he has in Washington now?
About a year.
And then he'll whine there too. And
we'll see.
You hate to see it because, like, he really does have some God given talent, and he just has a poor attitude. And a guy with that much talent, if he applies it and instead of just kind of whining about things, how teams are run, how issues in the locker room are going, he wouldn't be a journeyman like he is. Because when you are a really gifted talent like that, you're not really looked at from that lens when you are such a journeyman. I think Duchesne kind of, you know, is kind of a relative in that regard. Like that's who it reminds me of, Matt Duchesne, when he would go all around. He's very, very gifted hockey player and could be a very huge difference maker, but then he kind of went on the carousel for a little bit.
Yep, but if he finds the right environment, might make it all worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could be. But yeah, those were the key losses that I wanted to highlight. I just I'm not a fan of the free agency, but
No, you'd have hoped to
oh
get
well.
one of the big losses back at least, but it gives a lot of flexibility, and it gives room to see, and not for it doesn't force your hand on Nikolai Ehlers either, because there's a lot of
Yeah,
talk about him going. There's a lot of talk about, hey, what are they going to get for him? When are they going to get a first round pick? Are they going to get a second round pick? Get it back into this draft some more. With that much talent, though, you might as well give Scott Arniel a little bit of time to see if he can find a fit. Because last year he didn't. None of the lines that were played, he couldn't. They didn't find good fits. Like, he was successful with the first line with Scheifele and Viardi, but that didn't stay that way. They kept moving him around. Hopefully this year, Arniel could find a home for him, let him do what he does, and then okay, see if you want to keep him around, or February, March. That's when you move him at this point, I guess, if he doesn't fit.
and I mean you have that luxury too, where I don't know if I want to call it a luxury because I hate the concept of a throwaway season, but like when you kind of really drop the ball in a way in free agency by making, I don't think our team got any better, if I'm being
It
honest.
lowers expectations for sure. But remember, this is
Yeah,
a 55 win team. So
that's
even with the
true.
losses, it's still a team that should be considered playoff worthy. And once you get to April, who knows? Like
I
this
think
year
they're going to be
was,
a
yeah,
go
this
ahead.
year was, we were thinking that there was a chance to go a long, long way, but we caught the wrong matchup. If we catch the right matchup in April, who knows?
Yeah, I think I mean the other teams in the Central have certainly bolstered their rosters big time, and that's what kind of makes me think like not the concept of a throwaway season because who knows what can happen. We didn't have the highest expectations last year, and then look at what happened going into last year, I should say, and look at what happened. So anything can happen, but you do have the luxury of if the season goes downhill pretty fast, February rolls around and you want to move a guy like Ehlers to set yourself up for the following year, there's a good chance that you would be able to get a pretty good haul. Because if there was a trade deadline like this past year's, oh boy, there's going to be buyers that will pay top dollar.
Mm-hmm. And if you get to February and you're in the middle of it, then you make your assessments there. It's not like you don't have other trade pieces around, right?
Exactly. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Maybe they'll do a little better than the Bombers got off to their start. So
I hope so. That start was pretty rough, but it feels like the team's getting a little bit healthier now. There were
it's kind
injuries
of
left and right on
it's
top.
kind of funny. I forgot to tell you this. I'm sorry to cut you
Oh yeah,
off,
go ahead.
but so my in-laws and my brother were in town. What was it this past weekend? And we went. on Saturday, we went mini golfing at Action City, just off of 94.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, when we were mini golfing there, I saw a kid wearing a Saskatchewan Rough Rider shirt. And if this kid wasn't all of like 10 years old, oh boy, I would have trash talked him. But I was like, kid's with his family, and I am 30 years old, and kid was probably 10. That would have been a terrible, terrible look. But I didn't
That's
like
getting a little too close to home for me.
that. Yeah, I don't want to be yelling at the kid with the Rough Rider shirt. Much as I wanted to. I just can't do it.
Right. It's a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but I understand your feelings.
There was a time when I went to, this was kind of funny. I forget if I told you this story or not. It might have, but I went to a game at the Xcel Energy Center. The Wild were playing the Jets. And of course, I'm wearing this jersey. And there was this family in front of me. It was like a mom and her 2 kids. And it was like 2 or 3 games left before the playoffs. And the Wild were out of it by far, and the Jets were in the playoffs. They had already clinched at this point. Well, anyways, Comrie was in net, believe it or not. You know, the guy we signed
we keep coming back to that, yes.
Yes. So, anyways, he was in net, and he gave up like 5 goals, 6 goals or whatever, and kind of just left him out to dry because it was a throwaway game anyways, didn't really mean anything. And anyways, so like when the fans are chanting "Let's go Wild," in the middle of that, I'm chanting "Go Jets, go!" And there's a kid that's probably like 6 in front of me, and he's like yelling back at me. I think it's the funniest thing in the world, but you know, he's yelling back at me because I'm cheering for the Jets or whatever. Well, anyways, there was one point where like there were other fans like in the stands that were heckling me or whatever, and then I just stood up and I was like, "We'll see you in the playoffs." Oh, wait. And then lady that was in front of me, she turns around and yells at me. She's like, "That's enough." And I was like, "What?" Like, not everybody is going to be a fan of the same team in this arena. Like, there are people here that are probably from Winnipeg, and there's people that are fans of the Jets that are in this building tonight. And I was like, why am I getting yelled at and you don't yell at your kid who turns around and screams at a stranger? Like, if my daughter were to do that, I'd probably be like, "Hey, like, tone it down a little bit, little girl." You know?
Yeah, I'd be telling my boy who's 6, like, "No, that's not how you do this."
Yeah. Like, oh, talk about setting the example, right?
I'll refrain from any commentary on Minnesota's fan bases. Because we all have them. We all have the problems. So
we all have stories too.
Yes, we do.
Well, was there any more Bombers news that you wanted to touch on? Because it's pretty dead in Jets land.
Well, Kenny Lawler's out of a cast, so that's always good news. It'd be nice to actually have a primary receiver. Although I will say Drew Wolitarsky stepped up really nicely. He always does. Whatever role they ask him to do, they moved him into slot. It worked out really well. Strevler did what he was supposed to do as a backup quarterback. He came in, he managed a game, he did very well in keeping the team moving, gave him a spark. Hopefully this next week when Zach is back, we get everything rolling again.
What are your thoughts?
Well, we're hosting Calgary this Friday night. So we have revenge on our minds. They beat us a couple weeks ago in Calgary. We didn't get moving until about the 4th quarter because Zach got hurt. Took Strevler a couple drives to get moving. Once he did, it was pretty fun until they sent too many people on a blitz and Strevler got hit as he threw and underthrew one. These things happen. But I'm thinking that the Bombers have got their mojo back. They showed that they could take a game and control it from the start to the finish. They didn't fall down 10 like they have in the previous few games and had to play catch up because that's not their game. They're not a dynamic passing offense like BC, so let's not do that anymore. We're better when we get ahead early and slowly choke the life out of other teams. So let's get back to that.
It'd be really nice to see.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to land this with a fun fact, okay?
Okay.
So I saw this Facebook post a while ago. It was of NFL teams, of like who's the most famous person to be a fan of, this football team or whatever, and like showed Taylor Swift for the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Well, did you know that Brock Lesnar is a fan of the Winnipeg Jets?
Good. He's from what, Minnesota, right? And then he
South
likes
Dakota,
to
but he
live
went to college
South Dakota, went
at
to
Minnesota.
Minnesota, lives up in the prairies right now, or at
Mhm.
least at one point he did. So yeah, he's around there.
Yeah. So that was just a fun little factoid that I saw floating around, and I saw it a while ago, but that post on Facebook reminded me of that. So I was like, yeah, just maybe we could put him out there and add some physicality. I don't care if he's in his 40s or how old he is. I don't think he's 50 yet.
No, he was. Yeah,
He's
he's
got
not
to be in his
there.
40s. He's not in his 30s anymore, so
No,
he's
he's in
definitely
his
in his
40s, but no, he's not to 50 yet. I don't think.
So you know what? We got this thing called Google. I'm finding out real quick how old he is.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have some more celebrity fans and get the word out, but we'll take what
He's
we can get.
46.
46. So we were right.
Oh, he's turning 47 in 2 days on Friday.
Right. There you go. So depending on when you listen to this, he could be 46 or 47.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Brock Lesnar. Boy, oh boy, talk about a landing segment, right?
That's better than anything I could come up with.
Oh well, you never know what we'll deviate, we'll digress about. But that's the Winnipeg Terminal. That's the fun of it. And we'll go ahead and land this segment before I talk myself into a corner anymore. This is the Winnipeg Terminal for the dub. Go Jets, go.